Welcome to our monthly ACTS Town Hall. Thanks to our member companies for helping make these town halls possible. Your support makes our mission a reality. Together in safety, stronger in collaboration. The ACTS Town Halls are an open forum to discuss concerns and present potential solutions to improve damage prevention and excavation safety. These town halls are meant to be a discussion, and you're encouraged to ask questions and share solutions. A recording of this town hall will be posted on our YouTube channel and sent via email after the town hall has concluded. Before the end of the town hall, each of our panelists will highlight a moving forward step to ensure we stay focused on practical and impactful solutions. We are pleased to have a knowledgeable and experienced panel with us today. So to get us started, our moderator will begin with brief introductions.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris Stovall, and I have been in this industry for a little over 20 years. And I may have run into many of you at conferences, or you may have seen me in another town hall where I am wearing my 811 hat. Today, I am moderating this panel as the CEO of Linescape and co-founder. It's a 3-year-old company, and the topic today is very near and dear to my heart, so I'm eager to get in and have a discussion with our great panel. Those of you who looked at the announcement before today may have noticed that we're missing a face. Mike Paralak was supposed to be on this panel, but being the upstanding citizen he is, he was selected to be a juror, and he is performing his civic duty today. So I would like to get some introductions from our other panel members. Ron, if you would kick us off, and then Jimmy, you can go next, and Scott, you can finish us up.
Sure. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Ron Peterson. I'm the Executive Director of NOLCA, which is the Association for Professional Locators. I'm also the Claims Avoidance Provider for NUCA, which is the National Utility Contractors Association. And I've been in the industry, I believe this is my 31st year. So glad to be here.
Hi, Hi, Jimmy Wang with BizMetrics, Okita Partners. Been in the industry for a little around 22 years. As executive consultant, entrepreneur, investor. Happy to be on this panel with fine panelists and moderator.
Thanks, Jimmy.
And good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Crawford. I serve as president and CEO with Virginia 811, and I think I'm the youngest in regard to tenure in the industry at 8.5 years with Virginia 811. But it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited about the discussion about emerging technology and damage prevention.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. So today our topic is digital locating. And the way that I'm thinking about digital locating for our discussion today is a way to deliver digital information to a field representative so they can determine where buried facilities are while they're on site at location. So that's just kind of a brief definition for our discussion today. So the first question, Scott, if you could kick us off, and then Ron and Jimmy, please feel free to weigh in on this. Do you believe that this technology is the future of underground utility locating? If so, what makes that an inevitable next step for the industry? And if not, why do you feel like we're not quite ready?
Right. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. I froze for a minute, or everybody did. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I think, this is an incredibly exciting time to be in our industry with the emerging technologies and the digital technology in regard to locating and accurately identifying where underground utilities are within a reasonable amount of certainty. I do believe that is a strong direction that the industry is going. I'm hesitant to say maybe the future, because the future is so indeterminable at this time in regard to technology and how quickly it's unfolding and how it can impact us. But I believe that this is definitely something that notification centers need to be looking at. How to convey that digital information to excavators to help provide another layer of security and safety at the dig site and preserve the underground utility infrastructure. So again, I think this is definitely technology that needs to be examined and embraced at some level We can get into later about how much of it's going to replace the way we do locates now and all of that. But it's definitely going to be a part of the future, I believe.
Yeah, I think the term, the more appropriate term is not replace, but supplement or augment. And it's not an either or thing. It's not like um, there are too many people in the industry who think 100% of tickets, 100% of the time need to be addressed in, let's say, the current way, right? And that's problematic. But what's also problematic is, I think, saying 100% of tickets 100% of the time can be addressed with digital locating. But it's definitely a tool that can and should be used in some/many situations to, yes, maybe replace, maybe augment, maybe improve, maybe speed up the process.
Yeah, and I agree completely. With both, it has its place. It's not the silver bullet solution to everything at this point, but yeah, it definitely has its place. The more good information we can get to the field, I think the better off we all are. And we'll have to see where we go in the future. I mean, we have some very progressive utility owners that are going to get the most out of that data, and then we have some that are unfortunately still back in the mid 80s or 70s that will be slow to take it on. So yeah, I do think it has a place.
Yeah, and Chris, if I could just underscore one thing Jimmy said, because I think that's very important, that when we approach any emerging technologies and such, it really isn't an either or. It is all about the collaboration between human and technology. And again, I would want the way we approach it at Virginia, at least, is in a similar manner, that it is all about augmentation and not replacement. So yeah, so appreciate that coming out early on in this discussion.
Sure. Thanks, guys. And Scott, I had the privilege and the pleasure to see one of your presentations at a conference where you talked about how these sorts of things could be implemented, and I thought you did a fantastic job on that. But you guys do bring up a good topic here, and that's traditional versus digital, right? So you've all kind of weighed in that it's not a either or, but maybe a both and. Some make the argument that traditional locating methods are effective and reliable, and there is no need to transition fully to, or even transition at all to digital locate technology. If you think that that if you agree with that, why do you agree with that? And if not, why would you make a case that traditional methods aren't sustainable? And Jimmy, if you would kick us off on this one.
Yeah. So the analogy I give people is, imagine when, let's say, heavy construction machinery backhoes came out, right? When backhoes came out and someone said, hey, it's going to make shovels obsolete, right? We don't need shovels anymore, right? And again, it's not either or. It's like, no, we still need shovels, right? We're still going to have shovels, but there are going to be some situations where the backhoe is going to be the main tool. But there are still going to be many situations where the backhoe can't get to it, or you need to be more gentle, or you need to hand dig, right? That the backhoe is not appropriate. So it's not an either or. We need to be open-minded about what these new technologies can do for us, where they're appropriate, and where, in many cases, where they're going to work in conjunction with existing methods called traditional locating.
Yeah, and again, can't be controversial on that. I agree with Jimmy. They have their place. Traditional locating, as we were calling it, electromagnetic locating, it's not the perfect thing either. I mean, we have people out there still with utilities that are marking gas utilities by measurement. Some measurement a guy took back in the 50s, and they're applying measurements. So, even the electromagnetic locating that we get is not 100% how we do things. We also have the plastic without tracer wire conditions out there. So yeah, this is all going to fit together. It's not an either or. I think as the ability to capture digital data off these locating devices and do something with it, we can improve our interpretation of traditional locating and apply that in this digital field for getting that information out. We're still going to have those behavioral issues that we're going to have to deal with. Is a utility going to trust that when they send out digital data points that their excavator is going to use them effectively, that kind of thing. So we have to get over these issues. And, that's one of the things that we've worked hard to is develop relationships between locator and contractors. So we can, realize we're all working together and we're not working adversely. But I do think it's not an either or, and we need to embrace technology and figure out how we can apply it in.
Yeah, and hate to not be controversial, but no, I agree. I agree with everything Ron and Jimmy are indicating about this process and how we can adopt it. And the one thing I just add to all of this, and Jimmy did a nice job there with an actual example, but just with any of this, what is traditional today was once emerging technology and something that had to be embraced, and it was. And I always love the stories around, for example, the telephone, and how it was going to undermine our privacy and what a horrible invention it was. I mean, there are news articles that all, talk about that, but now look at it. And so it's similar that what is new to us today, it will eventually be in the future, what's being debated about. We can't get rid of that anymore. We can't adopt this new technology. So I like to just approach all of this in a very exciting way, that looking at the potential and the possibility of what we can do with it. And again, with the caveat that it's not either or, it's just simply how can we use this as a new tool to augment what we're all committed to doing, and that's damage prevention.
Scott, you brought up the telephone, and one way that I've thought about this is I was not around at the time when this transition happened. At least I don't think I was. But, telephone used to be manual switches, right? You would call the operator, and the operator would take the jack and make the connection with whomever you were trying to reach. And then because the phone became so ubiquitous, the operators were overwhelmed and could not keep up with the amount of calls that were coming in. And so some technology had to be created to address that, and that was the automatic telephone switch. I have heard a lot of people saying that we're in that same position now in the industry, like with the investment that comes in for broadband and probably electric right after that, and the growth and the economic progress that we're making as a country. Is this technology, or is this next step inevitable or necessary because we're overwhelming the system with the amount of volume that we're putting into it? Or is that kind of maybe a false alarm?
Yeah, I think the word I think about a lot every day, almost every hour of every day, I'm that nerdy about this, is scalable. Okay, is scalability, scalability. If you think about all the great companies, the great tech companies, the great innovations, if what we are doing right now is not scalable, it's not sustainable, right? So what's not scalable? What's not scalable is one ticket comes in, let's say on average 6.2 transmissions go out, and if up to 6 technicians and 6 trucks are going out to that one ticket with the 6 transmissions, that's not scalable. Because if you increase the transmissions by 10%, you have to increase the headcount, trucks, devices by 10%. That's by definition not scalable. So what are some scalable technologies we can use in conjunction with the workforce to make the solution more scalable? And that's what I think about a lot, right? And I think a good way to think about these emerging technologies, as Chris, or I forgot, as Chris or Scott put it, um, all kind of current, technologies were emerging ones, right? Is instead of looking at a glass half empty, as in where does this technology fail, or where is it imperfect?
Mhm.
We should look at it as where does it work? Where is it useful, right? Where is it useful? And not let perfect be the enemy of the good, right? It's not perfect, so we can't use it. Well, the current methods are not perfect. So just focus more on what it can do and where is it useful, and then go from there.
Yeah, no, yeah, agree with that as well. And looking at this, it is about the efficiencies. Necessity is the mother of invention, and looking at the amount of ticket volume that I think we've all been experiencing across the nation. And I did not mean to give myself a thumbs up there. Now there's a little downside of AI. Okay, it just read my gesture and gave me a thumbs up. But nonetheless, with looking at the ticket volume we've been experiencing, the infrastructure bill, broadband expansion, we in Virginia, at least, we've had out of the past 5 years, 3 record years out of the past 5. We broke 1.7 million tickets last year, which was a record. And so to Jimmy's point, it's like, the scalability there is just, I mean, it was a strain on the system. And so therefore it led to collective meetings between stakeholders to explore how efficiencies could be found. And I'm very proud of a lot of the ideas that came out of those meetings with locators, with utilities and excavators working together to find ways to get through that. And there have been some innovative ideas to leverage technology in new ways. So again, I don't want to keep saying I agree with Jimmy, agree with Ron, but I do agree. To me, it's a half full kind of thing that we need to look at. We are witnessing some unprecedented challenges in our industry, but at the same time, unprecedented technologies that can be leveraged in unique and exciting ways in order to make, again, the whole effort for damage prevention better.
Yeah, and again, I agree. We don't have a perfect system now. I love what Jimmy said. We can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. We find a way to adapt, move in, identify the shortcomings of a new technology, and figure out how to address that. Take the positives. We want the positives and figure out how to work with that part of the glass that isn't full. So fill our toolbox, so to speak.
Indeed. So I'm looking at the comments as they're coming in, and there's a lot of discussion right now around accuracy, and it was a topic that I had thought about bringing up with you guys. So I think that the future, or the promise of digital locating, is that it can provide at some point down the road greater precision, right? But does it risk creating a false sense of accuracy, a false sense of security? How should we be thinking about accuracy? Does it matter? Do we want to get down to a certain point? And are there instances where it doesn't matter? Ron, kick us off on this one. How should we be thinking about accuracy?
Yeah, it's a great question. And when I'm thinking about this, my first thing is, where are we getting the data? Are we trying to take the data off of traditional locating? If we're getting that data, what is our confidence level of that data? There is, I'll just throw one utility out there. National Grid has a system by which they get digital data points. Having basically audited that data, some of that data, I can see that data point was created by a low frequency, high current locate with multiple antenna technologies. So I have a relative confidence that that's a pretty good mark, as opposed to the next, another data point might have been, a high frequency, virtually no current, which would tell me somebody's inducing. Now, do I have a confidence in that? No. So just within the locating piece, it's a struggle with figuring out, is that good or bad, and do we have the back data to validate a data point? Now, if you're talking about during installation, maybe that's a different story. And what are we going to consider accurate? I saw that scroll across. I remember getting my first app with a locator, and I went out and took a data point on my electric line. Took several of them. My electric line runs from a pole in my front yard to my house. My first data point I collected back in the day off my iPhone was across the street. There's no accuracy. So, it's, I guess there has to be some, yeah, I guess from the locator's perspective, I need to know the quality of the data point and how I get to that quality of that data point. I mean, we've got all this RTK technology out there. Are they pulling this point off of 4 satellites or 34 satellites? So, and I am probably the least versed to be talking about, accuracy of those marks, but we have to know that. And so to an extent, there could be a false sense of security. But I think the positives, if we can do that, I still look at that as a half full glass.
Yeah, I think what we need to do better in this industry, one of the things we need to do better is what they call segmenting the use cases, right? So there are going to be some use cases where accuracy is probably very important, okay? But there are going to be, I think, some other, and maybe a lot of use cases where it's not that important. I just need to know if there's something there, right? And if it's within, maybe 5 feet of me, for maybe I'm doing a design, maybe I'm doing something like that, or maybe it's in I'm planting something very shallow, right? And we're just having a good enough idea fast is sufficient, right? And that's not all the time, but I think we have to segment the use cases more into space. And I suspect I've seen some of the surveys we've done on why some people don't call 811, right? And I think my takeaway from a lot of that is they don't have a tremendous amount of confidence that they're going to get locates in a reasonable amount of time, and so they're like, okay, I can't wait for this, right? So there's kind of if you think about the process, right? It's not just accuracy, but it's also time, and in some cases, cost. So if we segment more and then break out the cases where less accuracy is sufficient, and then there could be, like, let's say 4 or 5 levels, if you will. I think that will serve the stakeholders better.
Yeah, one thing I would just add to that is, I would lean more toward the accuracy to the best of our ability. Jimmy's right. I mean, there are some cases where we can be a little more abstract, not as intent on that level of accuracy. But I think in general, at least, again, coming at it from the notification center side, we want, of course, an accurate ticket. And so we attempt to leverage some of the technology to achieve that. I would just kind of maybe circle back a little bit to some of what I think Ron was alluding to, and state that, one thing I think we come across a lot of times is this belief that, data is end all be all. Data is truth, and it's not. Data is simply gathered by humans. It's put together by humans. It can be flawed. And so I think just with any of these discussions, we should, and use of the technology, we need to approach it with a level of healthy skepticism. Don't be automatically against it, but question, ask the right questions about the accuracy, and how was this data gathered? What is the average precision of accuracy for this? Was this a unique statistically valid sampling, if we're looking at some of these surveys that we look at, and all of that? So that's the one thing I really want to caution, is this belief that we're data driven. I think we need to be more data inspired, and it still comes back to the human interaction and discussion around that data to find the level of accuracy we need.
So with that, do we have to solve the question of liability as we deploy this? Because that's really the data accuracy question. Really boils down to, well, if it's wrong, whose fault is it, right? Like if there is a line cut or a line strike, because of the data or data being wrong, then who's at fault? So do we have to answer that question first? Is that something we can solve along the way, or how do you guys think about that?
Well, I might jump in on that one real quick just to say, and I hope there's no lawyers on here, but the lawyers always take the fun out of everything. There have been some amazing ideas that have come out of stakeholder meetings, and when they start getting explored, then there's, some legal ramifications about liability. And so I think it does need to be a part of the discussion. It unfortunately, we are a very litigation happy country, and so that is always on everyone's mind, and we do want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves as much as the utilities and all of this. So that needs to be a part of the discussion, but I would not want it to be something that puts a barrier up to advancements that are needed, but ways that we can work together to find ways around some of those issues of liability, if that makes sense.
Yeah, my cynical view of this, unfortunately, is if something catastrophic happens, we're all getting sued anyway. Shotgun approach and let us all fight our way out of it. Unfortunately, and that's what we see in big cases. Look, you can't let that get in the way of moving forward. It's there, you recognize it. I mean, I've been dealing with this liability issue when broaching the subjects of certification now for 15 years. I saw a friend roll through the thing on Greg Jeffries, who's on the call. We might have been kicked out of a few meetings for mentioning that word. So you can't let that get in the way. You got to keep moving forward. So I don't think we let it stop us.
Yeah.
Yeah, for almost anything you can think of, potentially catastrophic consequences, right? But an example I use a lot is Uber, right? Now we all use Uber, right? Everyone uses Uber, but before Uber came along, if I had walked up to people and said, "Hey, listen, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get into a car with a stranger, and that stranger is going to take you where you want to go, and that's the way everyone's going to do it. And by the way, your kids are going to use this as well." You know what the response would have been? Yeah, there's going to be 10,000 lawsuits every day, right? There's going to be whatever kidnappings, and there are those incidents, right? You could Google it. There are those incidents, but given how many rides Uber gives every year, it's an incredibly small fraction. And Uber is now the most valuable travel-related company in the world. It's valued at around $150 billion. So the point is, whatever we do with technology or technology in conjunction with, traditional methods, call it, you can always think of the shark attack, what I call the shark attack scenario, right? But they're going to be done right. They're going to be relatively rare, and frankly, I hate to put it this way, but it's going to be a cost of doing business. Like when a rogue Uber driver, touches a passenger, right? But so that's going to be one incident, and okay, there might be some liability there, but out of tens of billions in revenue a year, okay, let's move on. And by the way, what are the alternatives to Uber? Taxi, before Uber, taxis, right? Taxi drivers were not the most, let's say, well-behaved workers before Uber. So they existed before Uber. We had incidents before whatever technologies we're talking about, right? So it's going to happen, but done right, they're going to be a very small percent of incidents.
I love your analogies, Jimmy. You got an analogy for almost every scenario we run into. I'm sure you'll have one for this one too, because another question we get a lot when we talk about this emerging technology is data privacy and data security, right? Are we at a place where we feel comfortable sharing what we would hope to be very accurate utility maps digitally. And, what happens if a bad actor comes in? Are we exposing critical infrastructure to cyber threats or, adversaries? How should we be thinking about the security side of this?
Yeah, so here's my analogy for that. I'll give it to you in a sec. But first, we should definitely be thinking about it because these are very real concerns, right? Uh, Second is these concerns are not unique to this industry. Okay, we have industries out there that have people's social security numbers, credit card numbers, their health records, their whatever, that are arguably even more critical and private than underground facilities data, right? I mean, let's not forget, if I want to know where the underground facilities are for nefarious reasons, right, I could call 811 and then get someone to come out and mark them. So the third is, so these companies, these industries have figured it out, right? And we can figure it out. Third is, I get this sometimes. That's like people say, okay, hey, how can you put that in the cloud? It's so critical. And I'm like, I remind them. And I Googled it just before this, just to make sure it's still happening. The CIA and other intelligence agencies use AWS. Okay, so we have national security using the cloud to store their data, to do research, to do whatever, and we're like, oh, we can't possibly put Granny Smith's cable drop in the cloud, right? I mean, who are we kidding here, right? We should think about it, but other industries and other companies in this world in 2025 have far more sensitive data in the cloud than we do.
Yeah, I something Jimmy said, if I want to create an act, I'll go call it a locate request. I mean, NPMS has been around for how many decades with our national transmission gas lines and liquids mapped where anybody can see them. Every time I do a court case, I have to sign confidentiality agreements to look at maps, which is maddening to me. Come on. I get that there's probably more competitive security to that than there actually is cyber or terrorist or any of that stuff. It seemed to me that we should be able to put all that aside, get this stuff out there. Again, from a contractor's perspective, the more information I have, the more quality information I have about a dig site, the less chance things are going to go wrong. So yeah. I think we overblow this whole security threat thing.
Yeah, it's definitely there, and I would say that all of us have a responsibility for multiple reasons, not just this particular topic, but to be focused on cybersecurity within our networks. And it's just a part of existing in the digital age. It is increasingly migrating to the cloud. You just want to make sure you're protecting your data to the best of your ability. There are wonderful resources out that you can use for free to help with that. I'm sure many on this call have taken advantage of the Department of Homeland Security and CISA, which will provide you with for free weekly hygiene testing for your systems. They will come in and do a full analysis for your cybersecurity efforts. And that's what we based our cybersecurity strategic plan off of, was their feedback. Didn't cost a penny. Through taxes, of course, so we're all paying that, but nonetheless, we didn't have to write a check for it. But it's just something we do need to keep on our radar. But as far as this particular topic, I'm not as concerned because it's already been alluded to. There are other avenues the bad players can go to find some of this information about location sensitive infrastructure and all of that.
So I'm looking through some of the comments in chat here, and it seems there's a case being made that it's actually a financial argument for why this could be a non-starter, and just the cost of collecting this data in the first place. Is the return on that investment real? Is that maybe a fool's errand to invest that much money? How should we be thinking about the financial cost to build this out? And, is there a real return for that?
Well, I mean, I would say, I'll put it this way, and it's not my words, but I was fortunate enough to take part in a online live MIT 3-day class on extended reality and business implications. And in the class were 5 individuals from Qatar Energy. So there were several hours ahead of us, but they're in professional development, and this very question came up about return on investment with new technologies. And they basically said, is it going to save a life? Then it's worth exploring. That's the return on investment, that the investment in this technology, if it saves a life, then that's worth all of it. Now, we do have to be realistic. We have budgets within which we have to work, all of that. So we do have to explore the cost involved, but also what's emerging today is it's going to come down in cost. Just for those of you, old enough to remember the first flat screen TVs that came out and that technology. I mean, look at what you can go into Walmart now and get a TV for that's a rather large TV for a couple of $100. The cost will come down over time. But again, at least with our team, it's always coming back to service and safety. Is this going to improve the way we serve our stakeholders, and is it going to improve safety? And if the answer is yes, then it's worth exploring. Then how can we fund that? Is it through stakeholder partnerships? Is it through funding, through grants, or what have you that we can tap into? So I think it's definitely anything that can have that impact on saving the life is worth exploring.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but no life is worth an infinite amount of money, right? That's not my thing. That's what society says, right? And as you're driving on the highway or any road, why are there not guardrails on all the roads and all the highways, right? We know that will save lives, right? There are no guardrails. There are not guardrails along all the roads is because it's too expensive, right? No life is worth an infinite amount of money. So there has to be ROI to this, and I would look at this kind of mapping thing as what can be done in a low touch or very transparent way as someone is locating, right? So if the comments, I haven't read all of them, but the comments are right. I mean, look, if it takes twice as long to locate and map as to locate by itself, yeah, I mean, that's going to be very problematic from an ROI perspective. But what if it can be done as someone is locating, right? With let's say no incremental time. Or what about mapping from all of the available imagery that's out there right now, or past imagery, or imagery over time, as like 4M is doing, right? So as mapping to good enough standards using existing data, right? That kind of idea. So it may not be the kind of bulldozer, straightforward. Yeah, we're going to locate and map, and it's going to take twice as long, but we're going to be able to monetize that over the next 10 years. Yeah, that's probably a hard sell.
Yeah, some are going to embrace this, see the return on investment, some aren't. I mean, if I'm a distribution twisted pair phone operator, I probably don't see the value in super accurately mapping or digitally mapping my antiquated facilities. If I'm a regulated gas utility, maybe I see it a little differently. There has to be return on investment. As Jimmy said, it can't be, I'm doing my locate, stop at a data point, wait, go and move on. You cannot. We have enough trouble getting the locates on time as it is. We have staff issues. Another topic for another day. If you can do it reasonably seamlessly through a locate, and some are, like I said, I mentioned National Grid. I saw that Bob Turgeson's on here. National Grid has a pretty good system, man. They know how they're taking those real-time data points, and they're not killing their system. So, but there has to be return on investment. Some are going to take it, some are not. It's just the way it is.
So I want to get kind of real for a second here with you guys with a question. Maybe it's a little controversial. I don't know. Um, you guys have spent, almost going on an hour now. It seems like making a very logical case for why we should be doing this. We talked about all of the major roadblocks that have been put in the way, and you have very logical, reasonable answers for why they're addressable. But the truth is that adoption is very slow on this, and we're not capitalizing on the technology that is available today to move this forward. Is it fear of change? Is it awareness, or is there something more deep in the industry culture that is holding us back from this adoption?
So uh, I'll start. There was an adage for some of us who are old enough called "Nobody ever got fired for buying IBM." Right? This was in the 80s and 70s and 80s when IBM kind of ruled technology and IT. No one got fired for buying IBM. In this industry, if I thought deeply about this, and nobody's gotten fired for doing the status quo. Okay. And some people might be offended by my saying that, but it's true. No one I know has been fired for doing the status quo. But I do know a few people who've been, let's not say fired, who are no longer with us, with the industry, because they challenged the status quo. They wanted to do something differently, and they did do something differently, and they're no longer in the industry. So, nobody's been fired for doing this, for sticking to the status quo here. And I think people know that. They either know it intuitively or they know it like consciously. So they're like, okay, if I try something new, if I adopt this technology, there's some risk to me personally, professionally. And if I just throw more heads at the problem, if I just do more of the same, the worst thing that can happen is, hey, I try to do more of the same, right? What do you want me to do? And I'm safe professionally. So that I think it is the culture in this industry.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, look, there is resistance to change. Change is difficult. You do set yourself out there if you're at the forefront of change. What if it doesn't go right? Just everything Jimmy said. But I do think that people will step outside the box, and hopefully, I don't know that you're going to get a snowball down a hill effect, but hopefully as people outside, I saw somebody say something about the mainstream outside that, as people gravitate and see positive results from it, then yeah, I think you can get growth in it. But people are resistant to change. They don't want to, everybody'd like to be the first to be successful, but maybe not the first to take the chance. You know, nobody wants to fail on inventing the light bulb, 167 times or whatever it was, 1,000 times. They just want that one success. So, it's tough.
So Ron, Chris, you talked about an analogy. Here's my analogy for what's going on is, remember the wildlife videos with all the wildebeest standing on the river? They need to cross the river to get to the feeding grounds. And in the river are the Nile crocodiles. So all the wildebeest are standing there watching, and they're waiting for the first wildebeest to cross, who's going to get whacked by all the crocodiles.
Exactly.
And then after that wildebeest gets whacked and all the crocodiles are eating, the other wildebeest are stream across, and they're like, oh, okay, now we're safe. So
how do we do this without the first wildebeest getting eaten?
I'm telling you guys, all the wildebeest are standing on the river waiting for the first one to jump in and get whacked, and then they're going to go across.
It's right out of National Treasure. Somebody has to pay. Somebody's got to go.
Yeah, there's so many variables that come into play in regard to adoption, but yeah, everybody's hitting on the right points in my opinion. I would say though there are, you can test technology at a smaller scale, do pilot proof of concept. But I think one of the best ways to get some of the buy-in and so forth is to inject into your companies somewhat of a emerging technology awareness initiative, how to share consistently with team members in your company what is emerging, giving examples, having discussions about it, and then investing in small amounts of technology. Get a couple of headsets for extended reality and have some people using them and recognizing the potential and seeing how that can be leveraged. And I do want to say, I want to make something very clear. I agree, infinite amounts of money, no, but reasonable amounts of money on return on investment, yes. To me, the human life factor is important. And there are unfortunately times we have to say, no, that return on investment, it's too expensive, but it's still worth exploring. It doesn't mean necessarily initiating that particular initiative. But again, sometimes that lack of understanding about the return on investments is more of an antithetical kind of thought process in regard to the whole concept of the technology that's being used, and that's what we need to bridge that gap. And yeah, we don't want to be the one getting eaten by the crocodiles, definitely.
But Jeff Bezos said something really deep about when Amazon. I don't know if you guys remember, Amazon came out with their Amazon Fire phones, and it failed. And what Bezos said in one of his letters to shareholders was, we need to fail more. We need to fail big, and we need to fail more, because only by doing that, and only by accepting that, only by celebrating such failures, will we also get the big wins. And this industry, how do you say, is not very receptive to failures, even small failures, right? And it's a very conservative industry. So when you don't accept, or in Amazon's case, even celebrate big failures, right? Bezos is saying we need to fail on the scale of billions. Okay. When you don't accept or celebrate that, then no one's going to take risks, because any risk I take, any advances, any technologies I test or develop, if it fails and I get whacked by the crocodile, then you know what? I'll wait for someone else to jump in first.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need as the wildebeest who's crossing and sacrificing your life for the rest, you got to have the first follower or the first couple of followers, or it doesn't work. If there's too much time between when the first one gets whacked and the second one goes, it's just lunch or dinner,
Dessert.
We need that critical movement. So guys, I'm keeping an eye on time here, and I think we got time for one more question for you guys to discuss, and then we'll move into kind of wrap up and some of your takeaways. So a lot of this discussion has been around this digital locate technology. I don't know that this is the only emerging disruptor for our industry right now. So just as thought leaders in our industry, I wanted to give you guys some time to weigh in on what you think might be the next industry disruptor, the next big thing that's really going to push us forward or solve one of the major challenges that we have.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I would say
Please.
extended reality. I think it's just a matter of a very short period of time, 2 years possibly, when those cumbersome, uncomfortable headsets that OSHA won't even allow you to wear on a manufacturing floor, and I'm would dare say probably not an excavation site, become glasses. And all of a sudden your glasses now do have an ability to project imagery into the physical world, and you see that morphing of digital and physical world becoming more of a part of our lives and such. And I think that's where we're heading. Now that's going to allow, again, access to a lot more data in a very hands-free manner that could have a huge number of ramifications in regard to how that could impact our industry. from excavators being able to have data about where a supervisor has information as to the exact location of where their team members are, even monitoring health, heart rates going up or temperature. There's lightning 4 miles away or something, and a signal comes up in front of your field of vision. I really believe that the most immediate impact next will be spatial computing and extended reality. And then, this is a little bit of a stretch, but man, when quantum computing gets here, and that might be after all of us are well retired and maybe a little more than retired, but it will get here eventually if we can get the cooling piece under control and all of that. That's going to be a game changer just in life in general. So that's something maybe some of our kids will get to see, or grandchildren possibly. And I think the only other thing that we do that is in our industry that we need to be thinking about, though, is these the data centers and providing the energy needed for them to handle where we're going. That's another hurdle we're going to have to get over too, to get to that future.
Yeah. So Chris, you mentioned some of that. I'll say what I see with a lot of new technology and companies, and what a lot of them have in common is data of the underground, right? So companies like Linescape, or 4M or Sitemap that aggregates, collects, or analyzes and creates these maps of underground that are probably not perfect, right? Again, if we're waiting for perfect, nothing's ever going to happen. That are not perfect, but are enhancements or better than what we have, and that allow stakeholders to work safer. But a key word that we do not use enough in this industry is more productively. Okay. It's called the damage prevention industry, which is great, right? Safety is very important, but safety without enough mind share, without enough attention about productivity, we're going to lose people. Okay, people are like, look, I got a job to do, and I think I'm already safe enough, but you're hindering my progress. And I think we need to pay more attention to productivity, which is what I think a lot of these companies and technologies are going to do, while also enhancing safety.
Yeah, I admittedly hadn't given a whole lot of thought to the next great technological disruptor. I just know I don't want to be the first wildebeest. As you know, as a little long in the tooth guy, I still because I'm an old guy that in high school we didn't have computers. It's a little, been there a little while. I do have a few concerns about how something that's already here is going to affect us, being AI. How is that going to be used or misused through our systems? Maybe not on the technology end. I worry about the industry in general, and if we're somewhat due for a reset on how we do everything from excavation to locating to notifications. My industry is in turmoil. We cannot staff. We have monstrous turnover. Are there better ways to do it? I've seen a couple of people out there. Louis Panzer put out a "Let's reimagine locating" as we were setting up the first system on Mars. I know Mike and Jimmy have had some conversations about, online about how do we rethink things. So, maybe that's part of the deal that we need to look at. Maybe that's a disruptor, but, I think the systems, it's what we have. Let's make the best of it and figure out how to keep that half glass full and move it toward full.
Yeah, and with regards to the data and digital locating, Chris and team, is we're in kind of a catch-22 situation right now. We're captives to this, where a lot of the pushback on, call it sharing the data or making the data more available, digital locating, whatever, is the data is not great, right? The data is not great, so I cannot share it. And then because they're not sharing the data never improves, because there's nothing on the line. There's literally nothing, no stakes, right? So I think this is one of those situations where if we make the data more readily available, people will use it, and then there will be more incentive and more feedback to improve that data, right? Whereas if you hide the imperfect data because it's imperfect, it's always imperfect. Okay. Whereas if you make it available, people use it and they learn from it, and then there's some feedback loop, maybe improve the data. The data gets improved slowly over time. I think it's going to get improved pretty rapidly, actually, and we get better and better data.
So thank you guys for that weighing in. And I mean, I've had a lot of fun so far. This has been a great discussion, and time has flown by, and we're in the final 5 minutes here. And one of the things that we like to do on the town halls is to make it practical, and give those who attended the town hall something from your perspective that's practical as a next step for this. Like, how do we actually take a next step? And so I'm going to play Jimmy here for a second, and I'm going to use my analogy for how we make this practical, because I'm in favor of the wildebeest surviving the first one that crosses. So how do we build the bridge that allows us to cross the river without being eaten? I think many on this call and many who've attended this, we're all we're kind of first movers on this. There's been some adoption already in sporadic areas, and I like the way of thinking about this is it's not really we're waiting on the future. It's already here. It's just not evenly distributed, right? It's in pockets through the industry being used in small ways now. But how do we make it practical? What would be your next step advice to those that are on the call today with us?
So I'll throw out a controversial one, but people should think about it because of how could it help improve things. Is we have these Good Samaritan laws, right? Where if someone's in need, if someone needs help, and a medical professional or someone who's in that industry helps, and it helps in good faith. I mean, helps in good faith, and even makes a mistake, and that person doesn't make it, they're protected. So what if we had called good faith data laws, where any facility owner that makes their data available to the public in good faith for use, for improvement, for guidance, for whatever, and they have absolute immunity for that protection if the data is wrong, right? So I'm making it available to on my website. These are all the files I have, and you could use it however you want. You still need to call 811, right? That's the law, but it's available for however you want to use it, and I have absolute immunity for it in case it's wrong, right? And that's how the first wildebeest survives.
Interesting.
We've sure brought up wildebeests a lot, but the cynical me says we wildebeests get together and throw a gazelle in and then run. So, but I saw one of the comments thrown by. I think you have to have stakeholder collaboration with this thing. I mean, I spent last week and I'll spend next week as the head of the locating association. Last week I was with the PCCA, which is Powering Communications Contractors. Next week I'll be with NUCA. The point is, I'm trying to build relationships out there. When we go to the CGA, we're going to build relationships. We need to build the relationships out there. We need to do a better job of educating other stakeholders about what we're trying to do. And take the step, man, take the leap.
Yeah, and Ron, couldn't agree more. I sort of where I was going to go with the stakeholder meetings. It's a partnership, everyone working together and supporting each other on these initiatives, vetting them thoroughly. Transparency, communication is important. Internally for your companies, I would say, set up some rules in regard to how you're going to move forward with adopting new technology. What are you willing to spend on it? Look at your budgets and figure out what is the willingness to spend money, to what degree, Are we going to do pilots? Are we going to, do proof of concept? At what point do we admit we've gone too far? What's the zone that you cross into that indicates we need to pull back on that? Outlining that approach can help. And then, as I indicated earlier, I think it's using the technology. Instead of meeting in Zoom, use Frame and have a virtual environment where you're meeting, just to sort of expose individuals to what's there. And you'll be amazed at what people will come up with in regard to how we might be able to use something that's low cost or no cost even to help your initiatives move forward. Oh, and one other thing, data ethics policies, everyone should have one, in regard to data integrity and your ethical use of technology as well. And Ron kind of alluded to this earlier with AI. That would be another piece, in regard to the ethics of how you're going to leverage AI and what ethical constraints are you going to put around the use of it and such. So
that's great. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this panel. And thanks to all the attendees and the lively and active discussion in the meeting chat. I appreciate you all letting me be the moderator for this discussion. And I hope we get to continue it on in these stakeholder groups moving forward.
Very good. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
yeah, thank you.
Great discussion.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to all of you, our panelists, and our moderator for sharing your expertise. Please take a moment now to fill out a brief survey that will be posted in the chat so we can continue to improve these discussions and address topics that are important to you. Be sure to register for next month's Town Hall by visiting our website. Again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next month.